All right, so let's briefly review how we got to where we are and what our next tasks are essentially. You can see here we've got shooting, we've got music, and our ship gets hit a bunch of times. Eventually it'll destroy if we crash, especially these bullets. Again, you want to play with the audio player, go inside of here and sort of adjust some of the laser sounds. Those can get kind of annoying, the damage clip. And then down here in our audio source here, remember we have this music, so you can adjust the volume there. So it's just playing with each one of those values. We could also build a menu later where they click an option and we can adjust each one. Now, what we want to do is continue on with gameplay. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how we can adjust the player's health as well as kind of create a score screen for how many enemies that we destroyed. So let's start by go ahead and open up your ship's health script. All right, so we have this health. We want to be able to display our health on the screen, right? So we don't want to just pull this value, this its initial health value itself, and then modify it. We always want to either save off a copy or we want to create a method that essentially gets that health so that we're not just accessing the variable itself. So what I generally do is underneath all of these, like our awake, our on trigger enter, which are generally I try to keep my methods that are created by Unity. Like awake is a method that's made, that came, out of the box with Unity. And then underneath this, I sort of put my own variables. So I'm going to create another method here, and I'm just going to call it get health. And we're going to make this public so that we can access it from other scripts. And then we're going to have it return an integer, because if we look up here, our health is an integer value. And we're just going to call this get health. Now, because it's of an integer data type, it needs to return something. So we're just going to have this return our health. And so now whenever I call this from another script, all it's going to do is return whatever our current health is. And if you're not sure where this is referenced, if you highlight over this, and I just got a Mac, so I'll be recording some tutorials on Mac because I'm not really sure, but I know on a PC, if I hit F12, you could see it's referenced in ship's health. So if I click on this one, actually, let me see if I right click, show context actions. Let's see. Maybe it's under navigate too, or references. Let's see. I'll have to see the equivalent in a moment, but you could see we have this health minus health damage. And if you click on that, that's also in the script. This is where we're taking damage and we're updating it just in case you forget. And here's another one, where we're looking at hit factor. And so essentially this is where we're taking damage. We don't really have anything that adds health because we don't have any pickups or anything that increase the health. So we haven't written any code for that yet. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is right click it on here. We're going to create an empty game object. We're going to call this score. And we can call this score manager. I'm going to hit Control A and Control C to copy that. Inside of our scripts here, I'm going to create another C# script, model behavior script for Unity 6 and just name that score manager. And then make sure to attach score manager to our score manager empty game object. And then we're going to drag it inside of here so that we can edit it. So similar to health, let's just go create essentially a integer. We're going to call this score. This is going to store a score. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reuse my start method here. So let's go ahead and hit Control L to delete that line, but void integer. And then I'm going to name this one get score. And you probably guessed, if you want to pause it and guess, how do we get the score from here? We did this with health a moment ago. So what we do is a return score. So if you got that right, then perfect, you're on your way. And then we want to make sure this is public as well so that we can access that from other scripts. So let's save that. Now, how do we increase or decrease our score? I'm going to go ahead and just delete update for now. And I'm going to highlight this get score. And I'm going to duplicate it and just modify this method here. And to Control Alt Enter to tab that in. Again, I have to look up how to refactor on Mac or what the hotkeys are, which could be kind of annoying if you're following along and none of these hotkeys work. But anyway, modify score. So this is what's going to add or decrease our score. And we don't necessarily need it to be an integer. right? Because we don't need it to return anything. We just need to do some basic math. So what are we going to do inside of here? Well, we have our score value here. And what I can do is I can plus or minus our score, right? So let's go ahead and add a value. So we'll pass in some sort of value. And let's say we want to increase our score every time we blow up different ship types. So we can pass in different values. Like say the bigger ships are 20, the smaller ships are 5. So let's save that. So now we have a get score and we have a modify score. Now, if you want to, you can make sure that your score never goes below 0. And for that, we can use something that we used before, which is mathf.clamp. And it lets you clamp between two values, right? So what is the initial value that we're trying to clamp? Well, we want to clamp our variable score. And we're going to do this through 0. And then if we just type in integer dot max value, we're just saying, by saying that, we're saying, well, we don't really care how high it goes. So now we're clamping our value from 0 to infinity. Now, every time our ship crashes or, anything like that, what we want to do is we just want to reset our score. So I'm just going to duplicate this again here. And I'm just going to call this reset score. And we're going to call reset score every time, like I said, our ship crashes or we need to reset the game or we start a new level. And for that, all we need to do is say score equals 0. And this method now resets our score. So very clean, simple methods, nothing too crazy. All right, so where do we call our score, right? Well, we want to increase our score every time that, like we want to pass in a value every time our ships blow up or our enemies blow up. So if we go to ship health here, and what we'll need at the top here is a reference to our score manager. And again, pause the video, see if you can, kind of figure out where this goes. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing out score manager. And then I'll start typing out a lowercase score manager. And if we go through our script here, you can see we have an untrigger enter. And if we open this up, just kind of running through, you can see we take damage, we play a hit effect, we play audio, things like this, right? And then we damage, destroy game object, right? And here's our damage, take damage here. And if you look at the top, again, we have all of these different values. And if you're like, well, wait, what was take damage again? Well, go ahead and hit F12 on that. And you can see this passes isn't just an integer, and it's the damage amount. But first, up in the awake method, remember, we have a variable here called score, but we're going to get an error because it doesn't know where to get the score manager. We want to grab it from our scene. And we already have a find any object by type here. So I'm just going to hit Control D here. Now notice it doesn't give us an error. So you're going to have to remember to go ahead and just change this out to score manager. And you have to make sure that you change this variable name out to score manager too. So now that we are storing off the score manager from our scene into this variable, and we can adjust it. Now, if you recall, our ship health is actually used on both our enemy and our player. So we need a way of differentiating between, the score manager being passed to our player or our enemy. So an easy way to do that is by creating another Boolean and just calling that is player. So I'm going to duplicate this line. I'm just going to change this first one to a bool. And I'm going to get rid of this equals 100. And I'm going to name this is player. And we will use this in a moment to check, hey, if this is currently our player, we'll just, we'll select our player and we'll just tick this on, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, where inside of our prefabs folder, if I select my player here, you'll see on this script here, it says is player. If I tick this on, that means that this character here is our player. And don't forget that step inside of your ship health script. It's at the very top here. And again, if you see your enemy ship here, it doesn't have that ticked on, just our player. And if you do it down here, you don't have to go into the scene and override it. Now, remember what I said before, we want to have different values depending on the ship type. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this, and I'm going to rename this score. And for these smaller ships, let's just make it like 10, for instance. So if we save this now, and we look at our enemy ship 01, we could always duplicate this and make it enemy ship 02 and change out the art. But this one has a, let's see, where is our player? Crash ship health script. Here we go. This score of just this ship is 10. So if we make, like I said, variants of this ship, we could adjust the score value. All right, so let's go down to, let's see, player hit effect. Here's take damage. Now, this destroys our game object after health equals 0. The thing is, this thing is going to, add we're going to use this to also adjust our score. So what makes better sense is to refactor this or pull this out into its own method. So I'm going to hit control period and let the command period on that. I'm going to go to an extract method, and let's see, extract method. And I'm going to call this, let's see, ship. I guess destroy ship is a good name. And I'll just hit next, and I let it create a destroy ship method. So now once this health is less than or equal to 0, it destroys the ship here. So another thing we can do is, let's see, before our ship is destroyed, we can go ahead and say if, and I'll just tab this out to let it write it out. If this is not the player, so not is player, that means we are the enemy right now, we could grab our score manager and we can just grab modify score. And then we could just pass in 10, which is the score that we have at the top. So now what will happen is it'll call destroy ship. And then as that ship is destroying, it'll add 10 and then it'll destroy that ship. And if we look at our player, let's see, here's our player in our scene. And here's our score manager actually here. Let's see. And we'll feed this, we can get the score and feed it into a, let's see. Actually just make this a serialized field for now. And save that. And we'll have this fed into a UI, but there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. So we have in our score manager, it starts at 0. And what I did is I went ahead and selected my projectile blue here, and I set the damage to 100 because the enemy ship's health is 100. And so as I shoot these guys out, let's see. And I select my score manager here. You can see our score is going up. I destroyed 2 of the ships, and I got a value of 20 here. So we've got a score. We haven't set up our UI yet, and this video is getting a little long, but at least we have a functional score, and our ships do destroy. And again, if you need to, you can adjust the strength of the damage amount for the projectiles to test this. And so in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and add the UI and make sure to always check your stuff into version control and save it.